Okay, so I wanted to talk because I'm assuming I'm around some football fans, right? Hopefully, yeah. Are you ready for some football? Yeah. All right, so I want to talk about the Super Bowl, diversity and inclusion, and what that means for tech. So for us football fans, it's 127 long days until the kickoff. And I know I'm around a lot of Seattle Seattle Seahawks fans. I know it's a bit of a terrible spot there. I know I'm around a lot of you guys who are Seahawks fans, but you were on the Super Bowl in 2014. And I just want to have full disclosure, I'm a Cowboy fan. Sorry. I'm originally from Arkansas. Dallas Cowboys, Dallas, Texas was 3 hours from my home. So hopefully you can understand why I'm still a cowgirl. So in any case, one of the reasons I wanted to talk about the Super Bowl, and as it relates to diversity, is that in America, the Super Bowl is an unofficial holiday, right? Everybody in some way is doing something with the Super Bowl. And so if we look at the Nielsen ratings from 2017, 111.3 million people watched the Super Bowl in some capacity. That's not including people who watched it at bars and various other places. If you look at the actual TV viewership, about half of 53% males watched it and 47% females watched it. And if you look at the race of the TV viewership, it actually equals the US population. So ultimately, if you look at the Super Bowl actually is designed for everyone to participate. Right? And by everyone participating, what do I mean? I mean, there's people who love the game. There are people who watch it for the halftime show. There are people who watch it just to gather as a social event. There are people who watch it just because to be a part of the festivities for the Super Bowl. And then certainly a lot of people watch it for the commercials. Now, I can talk about diversity in each one of these settings, but I'm actually going to talk about it from the game perspective. And so if we look at sports, sports are an indicator of the society's progress on diversity and inclusion. And there's no greater indicator of this than the quarterback position in football. Right? If you look at the quarterback position in football, the quarterback is one of the few players, besides the center, who touches the ball for every play. If you look at the quarterback position, the quarterback is supposed to be the leader of the team, the intelligent one, the one who can predict what's going to happen, understands all of their players, and so on and so forth. And yet, not everyone gets to participate when it comes to playing quarterback. So if we look at identifying talent, and we look at the meaning of race in the NFL, here's a quote from Warren Moon, who's the only black NFL quarterback who's in the Hall of Fame. And Warren Moon says, in football, the thinking positions down the middle, quarterback, center, inside linebacker, were the ones that we weren't allowed to play. Supposedly we weren't smart enough or had the leadership qualities or whatever it took. At every position, for African Americans, conquering that myth at quarterback was so important. And nowhere did that sort of bear out besides this draft that we had last week. So if we look at the NFL draft, which I guess was last week, we had 2 first-round quarterbacks. Baker Mayfield, which is on your right, and Lamar Jackson, who's on your left. In the first round, Baker Mayfield was taken as the number 1 pick in the NFL in the first round. And Lamar Jackson was also chosen in the first round, but he was chosen last. Now, if you look at both of these players, actually both of them won the Heisman Trophy in college, right? And one of the interesting things that happens with black quarterbacks, no matter how good you are in college, they actually told this young man that he should probably go after wide receiver, even though he's won a Heisman at his position. This reminded me of when I was going to graduate school. I had a bachelor's degree in computer science. But when I actually went to go talk to the department head at my graduate school, he told me I needed to take some undergraduate courses in computer science, even though I had a bachelor's degree in the subject. We look at Baker Mayfield. Clearly the man can play football, but he has some off-field issues, right? And yet that didn't stop someone from taking him as number 1. So the point here here is that even though we're talking about diversity and inclusion, I feel that football, or any sport for that matter, but in particular football, because of the level of viewership, the number of people who participate in the Super Bowl, and given the prestigious position of quarterback, that gives us some guidance as to what kind of things we're battling when we're talking about diversity and inclusion as it relates to technology. So one of the long-term ramifications of stereotypes is how it impacts young people, how they make decisions about their career. And so as an educator, I am very concerned with how young people choose their careers. So one of the things that we're trying to do at Northeastern is change the stereotype, change the makeup of who gets to participate in tech. Who gets to be the quarterback? Who gets to be leaders when it comes to technology? Well, what's the issue? The issue, as you know, is that in 2020, or by 2020, the United States Bureau of Labor projects that there will be about 1 million more computing jobs than we actually have applicants. And as an educator, we have failed our students because in computer science, about 18% of women graduate with a CS degree. And when you're looking at underrepresented minorities, there's 10% who graduate with a bachelor's in computer science. But if you look at the race and gender across all degrees, then you see that underrepresented minorities make up about 25% of bachelor's degrees as a whole. And we have, for women, over 50% of women have bachelor's degrees. So we have a whole bunch of people who are trained at the college level, but who do not necessarily pick paths that are going to lead them into technology. And the goal for us is to, how can we close this gap by not only having this in terms of an economic issue, but in some sense it's a social equity issue as well. So the Align program is designed to take those people who have bachelor's degrees and get them on a pathway to getting a master's degree in computer science. So essentially the Align program is a 2.5-year program where the first 2 semesters are set up so that students can learn the fundamentals of computer science. It's not equivalent to a bachelor's degree. All it is a way for them to understand the fundamentals that will then help them to be successful once they actually take master level classes, right? So that's the goal. So that's 2 semesters, that's what we call the bridge. Then after the bridge, they take 2 semesters of master level classes. Those classes are not any different than what you would see in a master's level program in computer science at any university. And so those programs or those classes are things like algorithms and so forth, computer systems, architecture, things like that. Now what makes Northeastern's program special besides the bridge is that after the 2 semesters at the master's level, they do a co-op, right? And so a co-op is a 6-month paid experience paid by the employer to have someone to work, to train, to do what's considered to be an apprenticeship. In many ways, you can think of it as an internship on steroids. Okay? So then after that, and why is that co-op important? That co-op is important for 2 reasons. One is it gives the student basically the confidence that, oh wow, I actually am valuable in the workplace even though I came from a background that was not CS. And then the second thing is it's helpful for the employer because they get to have the first dibs on very qualified candidates who can be leaders in technology. And then after that, there's 1 semester that they complete, and at that point they have their master's degree in computer science. So before I was at Northeastern University, I spent 12 years at Texas A&M University as a professor. And when I learned about this Align program, it was so innovative and so amazing to think about this program that it was really a no-brainer for me to leave that position to do this one because it is such a unique and amazing opportunity for us to really rethink how we are training people, how we are getting people into high-tech leadership positions. For this Align program, just so you know, people kind of come from everywhere, things like mathematics, which you may expect, but we have people in English, biology, history, political science, anything you can think of, we probably have a student who majored in that. We're located in 4 locations right now for the CS Align. Here we're in Seattle. It was the first place that the Align program was initiated or originated. I'm actually in Charlotte. And so we started actually in spring of 2018. There's a version in Boston, of course, as well as Silicon Valley. The thing about these programs is there is no Northeastern degree for Charlotte, Northeastern degree for Seattle, Northeastern degree for Silicon Valley. It's a Northeastern degree, period. So no matter which campus a student takes courses at, they all receive the exact same degree. And the idea too is if a student wants to travel amongst the campuses, so for example, they start in Seattle and they get a co-op, let's say in Charlotte, they can finish up in Charlotte, right? All right. So in terms of some results, if you look here, one of the main things that we want to do is we want to increase the number of underrepresented minorities in the program in terms of improving that in pipeline for technology. And we also want to improve the number of women. And so you can see here we have about 44% women who enrolled in the program for spring of 2018. And we had about 15% underrepresented minorities for spring 2018 as well. We also are spending a lot of time thinking about how to encourage domestic students to enter the program. If you look at most master's degrees in this country, most of the people who get master's degrees in computer science are international students. And so one of the things that we do want to do as well is make sure that we're actually educating people here in the United States to be a part of this program as well. And so in spring of 2018, 3/4 of our students were domestic students, which is better than the 40% we had in 2017. So these are just some statistics that just kind of give you an idea of why we're so excited about the Align program, why we're so excited to be here and share what we're doing with you. Essentially, we have a 100% job placement rate. So every student who's graduated, which at this point is from the Seattle campus since they have been the longest and the other ones have just started in the other locations, all students have gotten jobs. All the students have basically gotten 100K plus positions. And here are a list of different companies that they have received jobs from. And then if you haven't heard about Northeastern University, basically we are a top 40 university. We have 5 campuses, that 5th one being Toronto, which we do not have a CS Align program yet, but we will be starting one there. Just to give you sort of an idea of the quality that you will be getting if you get a Northeastern graduate. So to wrap up, we started with the Super Bowl, and then I started talking about the Align program. And one of the things that, as I was thinking about this, that was really interesting is for the NFL, there are all these different watchdogs, and one of them is the Institute for Diversity and Equity in Sports, which is based out of the University of Central Florida in Orlando, which actually grades the NFL based on the following question. Does everyone, regardless of race or gender, have a chance to score a touchdown or operate the business of professional football? And so they broke it down into different roles that people can have in the NFL. Obviously playing the game, being a head coach, being an assistant head coach, being in the league office, being team vice president, being CEO, president, so on down the line. I only show you a few. And so you can see the higher up you're in the line, so let's say team vice presidents, there's no one there who is not white, and there's no one there who's not a male, okay? So in that particular category, or I'm not sorry, we have F, I'm sorry, it's 10.8% race, 20% gender. I meant to say CEOs and presidents, that actually is 0% for both of those categories. I apologize for that. So they rate each and every type of role that someone could have in a football operation and grade it from an A to an F. And so if we go and use this gender and racial report card and we go back and look at it for education, we looked at this 10% for underrepresented minorities and we look at this 18% for women. According to that scale, CS education has achieved an F. We have a failing grade. This is why it's so difficult for us to find people in tech, because we're failing the pipeline. Right? So our goal at Northeastern is to dramatically scale this Align program. I think we have a few hundred students at the moment across all campuses. We want to scale this to produce over 1,000 graduates, not just students in the pipeline. We want to graduate 1,000 students every year whose demographics reflect those of the population. So that is 50% female and 25% underrepresented minorities, thereby ideally increasing not only race and gender, but also thought in the U.S. workforce. And so as you're kind of thinking about this, I think I want you to think about, if we look at fan participation in the Super Bowl, again, everyone gets to participate. But the thing about high tech is we can definitely do much better than NFL or Super Bowl because our fans can actually play the game. They can actually code. They can actually lead skilled teams. You don't have to be born as a freak of nature to be able to run a football or something of that nature. So, how would you rate the recruiting and hiring practices of your diversity playbook? And how can you expand your high-tech playbook to provide opportunities for everyone? I told you what we're trying to do at Northeastern. I would love to hear about what you're doing at your own respective locations. All right, there you go.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Stephanie. I think we might have time for a couple questions. Do we have questions from the audience? We do still have a little bit of time here, so anybody brave enough to ask a question, or what do we got?
In today's world, where you can teach yourself a lot, how important is it to have a formal education and or a master's in computer science?
So, in today's world where you can teach yourself a lot, that may be true for certain types of individuals, but other individuals need the structured environment in order to be able to learn those skills. So I think you have to decide on what kind of learner you are, and if you are a learner where you can learn on your own and have the independence and the discipline to do what you need to do, that's absolutely fine. However, in my experience as a professor, not a lot of people have that level of discipline.
Thank you so much. Questions? We still got about 15 minutes here, so we can take some questions.
Oh, I guess I come fast.
But Julie, what's up?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. This one's a little louder, yes.
Thank you so much for your presentation. And is there an online presence or ability to work with the school online and not have to be in one of those cities?
So ultimately, we found out, and again, as my experience with teaching, online definitely, it's not a bad thing, but what I've noticed, especially after doing this particular program, is going from one completely different discipline to another. There are some things where an apprentice being right there with you, you just can't substitute that with an online presence. Now, once you have been cemented into the field, so let's say after your first semester of that master's courses, we do have a way for you to take the electives online. But that part of getting the fundamentals, changing your way of thought, all of those types of things, it's unclear to me at the moment how online could help achieve that. Yeah.
We have one back here.
I'm curious, how has this inspired other programs around Northeastern or at other universities?
Right. So right now we are in the position where we're talking to different universities so that we would love them to actually steal this program and implement it at their respective universities. So one particular university we've been talking about is Howard University in Washington, D.C. But the idea would be is that in order to change the needle for diversity, it's going to take more than just Northeastern. So we're going to work and prove that this model works, and we would love for people to pick up on it and change it or use it in some way at their respective universities.
We got one.
Hello.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm like behind.
We have one back there, and then go ahead, Sarah.
Thank you. So I know cost is a huge thing for a lot of folks. when it comes down to college, especially for underrepresented minorities. What type of offerings do you all have either at Northeastern, or can you recommend to those who are currently in that pipeline and don't want to go to college because they don't want to pay money for the rest of their natural life?
Okay. So, all right, so there's a few things. So one actually is, even though I'm using this word underrepresented minority, or IRMA as we're called, I'm definitely not a big fan of the word, because under, has a lot of different connotations. And in particularly, I kind of feel like I'm not under anybody. But it is the lingo that I'll use, but I did feel, given the group that we're in, kind of wanted to get that off my chest. And the final thing I'll say about the underrepresented, I said if I'm under anything, I'm underappreciated. So, so now back to your cost question. There's a flippant answer and then there's a better answer. So the flippant answer is that in the United States of America, we buy a lot of things that we can't afford. Yeah, right? And yet when it comes to education, we're like, well, I don't know, I want a coupon, right? So, now with that being said, the real answer is that at Northeastern, we're very committed to having people be in this program and to not accumulate a mountain of debt. So as a result, for qualified students, which fits our goals of increasing the diversity of technology, we will offer first semester free. Yeah. So that's one way we're helping with the cost. The second way we're helping with the cost is throughout the program, there are ways to get additional scholarshiping to help defray the cost. But then the third thing, besides the scholarships, is folks is making $100,000 coming out, right? So we're not talking about getting, mountains of debt and then not being able to find a job where you can't pay the bills, right? So ultimately, with this, what we're feeling is that whatever debt you accumulate, you should be able to get rid of that in 2 to 3 years, if not faster. Right? So that's the real answer, I would say. And so again, our dean, Dr. Carla Broadway, who is really one of the spearheads for this program, has made it a mission to not get people into mounds of debt. So first semester free, additional scholarshiping, and you're going to make a great salary when you come out.
Speaking on access, so community college, are you looking to scale this for community colleges?
At the moment, we're not in the talks with community colleges. Right now, we have been focusing with bachelor's degrees. We'll see how that goes, and then we'll see if we can take this model and expand it in a way for community colleges. So that's not a no, but it's a not right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
That one right here.
And what I wanted to know is, in terms of the misnomer of underrepresented minorities, what all is included in that? Is it only cultural differences, or is it also gender biased, gender identity kind of things? What kind of range do we have?
Yeah, so I'm certainly not an expert on the term, but what I know is it includes some races. So, for example, African American, Hispanics, Island Pacific, or anyone who, from a race perspective, is not a majority in technology. So, which is why the word underrepresented minority versus minority. Underrepresented minority, I think also, sometimes you'll see underrepresented minorities. It depends on who's using it. They might put in various levels of disability. They may put all those together. It just depends on how they want to do it. But from what our use of it is really from a race perspective, and it's those races who do not have a majority in technology.
Thank you. We have one back here.
Sort of along the same lines, can you speak to all of the programs you have for people with disabilities, and are they offered at all 4 campuses?
So can you be more specific?
I looked on the website. It looks like in Boston there's programs specifically geared towards people with disabilities. And do you offer accommodations, or
Yes, of course.
Do you have groups that support people with disabilities at your school as another underrepresented minority?
So I think whatever the federal guidelines are, that will be what we would have to offer as a minimum. And then, for example, if a student needs to take a test, let's say they're blind, we can make tests to where they could be in braille. I mean, we can do various types of things. So there is a minimum that we have to uphold as a university. And then any additional accommodations that may be needed, we will handle that on a person-by-person basis.
How do we get access to your awesome interns?
No, actually I was waiting for that. So in Seattle, we have Sam and Carolyn. And so in Seattle, we have we have a co-op person who's not here. So every campus has a co-op coordinator, as well as someone who's also managing the graduation process. And then every campus also has a director like myself. And so either contacting the co-op person or the associated director of the campuses would probably be the two best ways. So for me, it would be Charlotte, and here in Seattle is Dr. Ian Gorton. And those would be two ways in which we can. The other thing you can do is you can leave us your information and we can stay in contact with you. Right? Don't call us, we'll call you. No, I'm just kidding. No, but we would love that, because one of the things is we're producing these graduates. We really would love to have relationships with organizations or with companies, and then particularly also maybe your employees would love to be a part of this program as well, and maybe there's a way we can develop some different employee training programs and opportunities where they may not necessarily have to come through our full-fledged aligned program, but maybe there's a way we can help with some training at your organization.
Hi there. Thank you so much for speaking today. Quick question. What is the demographic or the diversity demographic of the staff and faculty for this program?
So let's say at Charlotte, it's 100% black. One? No, I'm sorry. So in Charlotte, we just started, so I was the first hire. I actually taught both classes in the spring. And then I hired another woman, her name is Maria Jump, and she'll be starting with us in May. So our faculty is of 2 and 2 women. And so that's kind of cool. We're looking to expand to hire maybe 5 more people in the next year, year and a half. So that's what we'll be doing in Charlotte. In Seattle, I know we have women faculty, maybe 2 women faculty. They have a lot more faculty. I'm not as sure about the demographics of the Seattle campus. Boston, which is the mothership, has the largest set of faculty. Probably that will look very much like the CS education chart that I gave you, because in order to be a faculty member, you have to have a PhD. Right? And so as a result, given Boston, I would say that they're going to be failing in their diversity. And partly is just because when someone does graduate with a PhD and they are really good at what they do, there's a lot of competition for them. The other reality, at least in my opinion, for Boston, is Boston isn't necessarily the most diverse place for a person to potentially choose to go and live, right? And so they may have a harder time attracting more diverse talent, let's say, than a Charlotte and possibly a Seattle. So no, not excuses, but there are realities in terms of various locations of places, which is why I think Northeastern has chosen to expand in the direction that they've chosen to expand.
Thank you. We're going to take 2 more questions. We have one here from Michelle,
Okay.
and we take one more. So.
Hi, thanks for your awesome discussion today. I wanted to ask a question in regards to what are your partnerships with some corporations, at least in the Bay Area or Seattle, in the top tech space?
Mm-hmm.
And are you also, as a 2-part question, do you guys have an alumni program where your students who've succeeded and who are working are coming back and helping provide mentorship to the current students coming up into the program?
Right. Okay. So with the Seattle campus being the first, I think that started around 2013, 2014. The program is a 2.5-year program, so that means they're going to graduate 2015, 2016-ish. So we got about, a little over 2 years, let's say, of graduates, right? And that first group is, I think, really going to be a handful of people. And so in terms of your first one, the Seattle campus is surrounded by Amazon. So there is a deep relationship with Amazon, with the Seattle campus, and particularly the director of that program, I think has some great relationships with Amazon. Our graduates have also worked with Facebook, has worked with Etsy, has worked with a number of these different tech leaders. In Charlotte, we're in the beginning stages of creating relationships because we just started. Charlotte, many of you may or may not know, is a big financial center. So it is the headquarters of Bank of America. So we're looking at creating relationships with Bank of America, places like Duke Energy, things like that. And then as it relates to your question about coming back, mentoring, and things like that, we would love to be able to do that. In particular, the other thing we're looking at is for our graduates, if they're interested to continue on to get a PhD and potentially be faculty members in our program. So all of this is in the beginning stages, and so even though I don't have a concrete answer, I would say these things are in the works, although there are great relationships existing with certain companies.
Okay, we have time for one more question. So who's it gonna be?
It's a big one.
We got anybody in the back over there? No, nobody in the
No.
back wanted to participate? No?
I have a question.
Okay, thank you.
Who's gonna win the Super Bowl? No Seahawks? What?
Yeah, Seahawks. Tiffany, so since we don't have another question, can you leave us with one parting thought?
Oh, well, so the one parting thought was again when I was talking about this Institute of Diversity and Inclusion, which rates the NFL and actually other sports as well as it relates to race and gender diversity. I think each one of us, and I think I even talked about this last night, each one of us in our own way has a way of moving the needle of diversity forward. And I think what each one of us should do, and if I think about my life and I think about why I'm in tech, one of the things I was saying last night was my mom, I was doing tech in the 80s as a kid, and my mom never said, you know, tech isn't for girls. Or what's this computer thing? Why are you spending so much time doing that? So for the girls who are around you, for the African Americans around you, for anybody who's around you, if you just can support them and ignite their dreams, that will be the greatest thing you could ever do for diversity and inclusion.
Amen. Amen. Thank you so much.